Hey, Pastor Bob here. I want to address some of the questions we received about the covenant that God established with Abram in Genesis 15 and how we can understand what's really happening there and how it's relevant to our new covenant in Jesus Christ and our belief in Him. In Genesis 15, when Abram asked God, how can I know that you're going to do these things for me, that you're going to give me descendants and I'm going to possess this land? God says, go and get a heifer and a goat and a ram. And it's apparent in the passage that Abram knew exactly what to do with those things. It's part of the covenant and how a covenant was established in their day. Now, for us today, we think in terms of maybe lawyers drawing up an agreement between two parties and their signature being their way of saying, I will keep my side of the agreement. But in Abram's day, this was a very common practice. In fact, we might think in terms of a wedding covenant that is established between two families as a marriage is arranged. And as these animals are slaughtered in this way and arranged in this way, then both heads of household or both parties would walk through saying they're going to keep their side of the covenant. And then we might think in terms of those animals that have been slaughtered are going to become part of the feast that's going to take place at this wedding covenant, this wedding feast that'll take place celebrating the marriage. They're going to be having steaks and mutton. So we can begin to understand a little bit more how that might have been played out in their culture. Now, as we think about Abram's side of the covenant, we read in Genesis 17 that God has said, I want you to walk before me faithfully and to be blameless. And that's why we find in Genesis 15, as we put all this together, that Abram has this deep dread that comes over him when he begins to realize that he cannot keep his side of the covenant. And that's why it becomes significant that the smoking pot, the blazing torch, those represent the presence of God passing through that blood path. Abram never walks through the blood path. No reference to that. God walks through on behalf of both parties, establishes this covenant, and it points us to the cross. It's here we find the mercy of God, the grace of God, the love of God being expressed, and Jesus establishes that new covenant with us as we look to Him and believe in Him. It can be said of us, as it was for Abram, that we believed in what God has said, and it is credited to us as righteousness. Our belief in Christ and His sacrifice, what He did on our behalf, makes us right with God. And may we look forward to that wedding feast that has no end as we celebrate with Christ in the presence of God. May God bless you. Keep sending those questions in, and we'll see you online.